sociopathic mother-in-law next door entry. Today's date is Monday the 2nd of May 2025, and in the last entry we covered the dynamic of the flying monkey and the scapegoat. So the flying monkey is the enabler, the character roadkill is the flying monkey because she hasn't got the awareness to see the bigger picture and ask appropriate questions of the Husk before she commits to running around after her. If she had the ability to, or the awareness, self-confidence, I suppose, ask her mum questions. Have you asked the beacon? Have you asked her husband to help you out? They would be the obvious people to ask. Have you asked them, Husk? No. Well, why don't you ask them first before you ask me to go out of your way? So that's just common sense. But she doesn't do that for whatever reason. I just think it's complete lack of awareness and lack of emotional intelligence. And as a result of that, she ends up offering, because she'll do anything, she ends up offering to run round after the Husk, and we're left scratching our head and we can't work out why she's ignoring us. What have we done wrong this time? And then you confront her and you're just given lies. There's always a lie ready as the cover. And it's normally lies by omission. She only tells you half the story to make it look like she's done nothing wrong. And then when you find out the full story, you realise that you've been completely manipulated just to accept a false version of events. So the flying monkey enables that behaviour. If it wasn't for the flying monkey, that hurt wouldn't be delivered. She would be powerless because she always has to do everything covertly, and she needs that third party to do it for her, to enable it. And that's the division as well. And then the scapegoat is used to put the blame on when you challenge her. She always has ways of blaming us, or certainly the beacon. Why didn't you ask me? Why didn't you? I told you I would do it. And then there's always excuses which deflect or project the blame back onto the beacon. From anything like, well, you were at work, you were busy, to, well, you weren't speaking to us then. It doesn't matter. Only a child behaves like that. So we'll cover the dynamic. A couple of examples. And these examples, I could go on and on and on and on. They're all little. They all seem trivial. Certainly when you explain them to a third party. But they all add up to just constant hurt and abuse, emotional abuse. It's a form of emotional blackmail. Fear, obligation, and guilt, fog. They're the tools of emotional blackmail. Fear of the consequences of not running around after her and doing absolutely everything possible to keep her happy, even when it's completely inappropriate and selfish on her part. But you fear the consequences, you fear those mood swings, the huff, and then the abuse, the punishment, obligation. She manipulates you into feeling that you've got an obligation to run round after her. She's bought your loyalty. Goes into huffs if you don't do things for her. And then guilt if you don't do anything. If you don't do the thing, she makes you feel guilty by getting the flying monkey to do it. And then when you see that happening right in front of your face on your own property, she thinks you feel guilty. I don't. I'm going to feel guilty for your stupidity. You're not going to project your guilt onto me. It just makes us angry. So that's another tactic, the emotional blackmail. So at this point, there was another confrontation, and without going into any detail, and I was really harsh. You know, I really give it to her, both barrels, on all of these confrontations, because it's my wife. It's my wife that she's abusing. And nobody abuses my wife. I don't care who you are. But the message never gets through. You're always left feeling you've completely wasted your time. She can't let the guard down, the husk. She can't put herself in somebody else's shoes because she's got no empathy. And she can't admit she was wrong because the husk, the fake persona and the fake husk of strength is perfect. And there can't be a chink, can't be a single chink in the armour. If there was a single chink, the whole armour would collapse. That's how fragile the husk is, because it's built on lies. The whole house of cards is built on one huge, massive lie, which is then just built on with more and more and more and more little lies. One of those lies is exposed. Whole house of cards come crashing down, and the small, vulnerable child that's buried deep inside will be exposed. And that cannot happen. That self-protection mechanism, which has served her well for however many decades, it's not going to falter now. Not just because I'm giving her it with two barrels, both barrels. It's going to take a hell of a lot more than that. So she can't admit she's wrong, even when it's blatantly obvious. You're speaking to her with nothing but logic and rationale, explaining it like you would to a child. I explain things to me now 15-year-old daughter. I always have explained things to her. She gets things in about a tenth of the time. Explaining something to an early teenager takes a tenth of the time that it does explaining it to the husk. And that's because she's a tenth of the intelligence, a tenth of the mental age. So you're left feeling like you've completely wasted your time. And she just always pushes the blame back to the beacon. I think I've said this in a previous entry. Well, she should tell us if I'm behaving badly. And I explained this again, I explained this previously. You're the parent. You're meant to be an adult. And I try to explain to her the dynamic that I say to her, why do you think your daughter doesn't push back? Why do you think she doesn't do that? Like, I'm doing it now. I'm pushing back, I'm challenging you. We're having a difficult conversation. It's confrontational. Why doesn't your daughter do that? She can't answer the question. Or maybe she's just refusing to answer the question because she'd have to compromise on something if she answers the question. So why doesn't she? And she can't answer the question. So I say, this is around about a year ago, so the beacon is, say, 48. I said to her, how long have you known your daughter for? 48 years. Do you know your daughter? Of course I do. Okay. So if you know your daughter, why doesn't she push back at you? She can't answer it. And also, if you know your daughter, you would know that what you're doing is hurtful. It's hurtful anyway, but especially to your daughter and her personality, her character, her soul. If you knew her, you'd know that this is hurtful. But, more importantly, if you know your daughter, why doesn't she push back? And she knows the answer. But rather than... So the correct answer is she doesn't push back because it's her mother. Because you don't want to be in a constant arguing bad space with your nearest and dearest, especially given that her natural dad has abandoned her. He's completely cut off contact. Not obviously for any reason that upsets us, because it was a moral issue and we stood our ground, and he won't apologise. So doors open a crack when you're ready to apologise. And that was let me just work it out. That was 7 years ago. 7 years ago, this is the knob father, the beacon's natural dad, the only grandchild in the family, was only 7. She's now 15. He won't know what she looks like. He wouldn't recognise her if he saw her on the street. And that absolute piece of trash who tried to get between parents and their daughter, that's all I'm going to say on it. Him and his ironically sociopathic wife, the stepmom, complete narcissist. The two of them try to get between me and the beacon and our daughter, and on a moral issue, and he used our daughter as a excuse to have a go at us, and it basically criticised our parent. Nobody criticises anybody's parenting, unless there is obviously abuse taking place and there needs to be an intervention. And I can absolutely guarantee you there was nothing taking place that required intervention. It was a woman who couldn't keep her mouth shut because she was annoyed at me because she's insecure, and in order to get me back, she criticised my parenting style. And nobody gets between a parent and their daughter. Nobody criticises your parental style. And again, I'm not going to go into that. Just wanted to touch on it, that the knob father has abandoned his family again. He's already abandoned his family when the beacon was 6/7, and now he's done it again to her. And he's and the only granddaughter. What a piece of work! What an absolute piece of trash! And then he has the nerve to turn up at my house and double down on the lie. Obviously, he came alone because she didn't have the bottle to turn up. Pathetic. Anyway, so going back to the Husk. Why won't your daughter challenge you? So remember, the beacon has lost her natural dad twice, been abandoned. Her stepdad, who she had a real loving bond with, has left her, obviously, not by choice. And she's only got her mum left. There's only so much pain somebody can take. And this is completely lost on the Husk. Completely lost because it requires emotional intelligence and empathy. So she says, I don't know why she doesn't push back. Right, so let's think about it. The real answer, the true answer is obvious. That mothers get away with so much when their kids are adults, because this dynamic plays out, in my mind, in so many dysfunctional families, where the parents get away with, well, it's like they're getting away with murder. They just do and say anything they want, and the kids just let them get away with it because they don't want to challenge them, because they still see them as the authority. You know, authority. Never have been. So she knows the real reason. I believe she knows the real reason, and I believe she's intentionally takes advantage of it. That's abuse. Uses that relationship dynamic, uses it abusively, abused. And she knows that. Now, if she was to admit to me the correct answer, she doesn't challenge me because I'm a mother, then she would have to kind of admit that she's taken advantage of that dynamic, and she'd have to sort of make a compromise, as in change her behaviours, compromise her behaviours, because she's got to remember that she, in the dynamic, is some sort of, not authority figure, but some sort of figure that is awarded special privileges that nobody else on the planet is awarded by the beacon. Nobody else gets that treatment by the beacon. Nobody else gets that level of grace. She lets her get away with stuff without challenging her. Nobody else in her private life, outside in the real world or at work, nobody is afforded that privilege by the beacon. And I even said this to the Husk. I said, when she couldn't answer the question, what is different about you to every other single person in the world? Because nobody else, that's what I said to her, nobody else doesn't get challenged. So what is it that makes you special? She couldn't answer the question. Now you tell me, what sort of dumb individual can't answer that question? What makes you different to every other single person in the world? She couldn't answer the question. So this is fake stupidity. Of course she knows the answer. But this is what narcissists do, sociopaths. They play dumb because it's a very, very, very handy get out of jail card. And you're going to see the play dumb card used in so many of these stories. So, in order to protect her position, self-preservation is her first tenet. She plays dumb. Now think about it. She's so obsessed with protecting herself, selfish, that the other option would make her be seen to be an understanding and empathetic mother. The correct option would have shown her as that. But no, she'd rather play dumb, protect herself, and as a result of that, I actually say to her, so you don't know your daughter? Because you couldn't answer the question. And I said this to her, so you don't know your daughter? After 48 years, you can't claim to know your daughter. And that's the consequence of her choice. Now, obviously, what a normal functioning human being would weigh up in any scenario, normal functioning, when you ask the question, would be, what's the truth? I'll tell the truth because that's the correct and moral thing to do. But even if you were having a dilemma, who would choose that answer? It's madness, absolute madness. So this confrontation pretty much ended like that. And what I've done is I've taken the time to carefully explain to her why her daughter doesn't push back, why she doesn't challenge her, and explain to her that she needs to take more responsibility and knowing that these behaviours are hurtful and harmful, cruel, and not do them in the future. And then things will get better. And I've explained to her, what happens is you're cruel to the beacon. You're cruel to the beacon, and the beacon doesn't want to push back, hasn't got the energy for an argument, and probably knows that it's futile. Well, because it is. And therefore goes distant. That's her coping mechanism. I'll just go distant and silent and minimal in terms of contact until this blows over. Yes, it is like burying your head in the sand, and that's not a key characteristic of the beacon. It's not. She doesn't bury her head in the sand. This is how the abuser affects her. She affects her to the point where she behaves out of character. Now, there are some times when, if you ignore something, it will go away. But this is not one of them. The Husk isn't going away. So, but I completely understand and sympathise with her for her reaction to the abuse, because it's abuse. She's been abused by her mother, and that's where my role is as the protector, to step in. I could not give 2 monkeys, flying or otherwise, I couldn't care less what happens between me and the husk, because all I care about is protecting the beacon. And if I, through telling the truth and not taking this abuse, if I cause something to deteriorate between me and the husk, I don't care. If I cause something to deteriorate between the husk and the beacon, I do care. But not for the reasons that some people might think. I care for the beacon. I don't want her to not have any parents left because they are treating her, like absolute dog. Like a dog, let's just put it like that. But quite frankly, if it wasn't for the beacon's feelings, I couldn't care less whether the husk loses her, because she doesn't deserve her. She does not deserve her. And the beacon doesn't deserve her either. As they are both equal in that sense. Neither of them deserve each other for complete opposite reasons. And why on earth should I care about preserving the abuse? That would make me a flying monkey. So, very, very, very difficult. So, explained all of this to the husk, adult to adult, which is exactly how I speak to my teenage daughter. And she gets things a hell of a lot more complicated than this. But as we'll soon learn, I'm not speaking to an adult, I'm speaking to a child. So, did the behaviour change? It kind of has a little blip, as in, a positive blip, a blip upwards. And the beacon was always grateful for me putting my neck out and trying to improve things. But what happens is, when I have these confrontations and I'm defending the beacon, those two don't have a conversation afterwards. You'd think a normal functioning mother, the husk, would soon afterwards have a heart-to-heart with her daughter. No, it doesn't happen. They both just pretend nothing's happened and let's just see if it improves. And that is insanity. I can't fix this. You two need to fix it. All I can do is start the ball rolling. So they don't talk to each other. And I understand why the beacon doesn't try and instigate a heart-to-heart, because she's done it before. And it's futile. You can't break through the husk. You can't get it to see your side. And she always ends up bordering on an argument. And then when she feels herself getting sort of agitated, frustrated, she just zips her mouth, the beacon that is, because she can tell it's just going to go into an argument and you're actually going to take 2 steps back instead of any forward progress. And this is tried and tested, she knows this. She's basically in an impossible situation. She's living in a game, and she's living in a game where the rules are made up, and they're made up by the husk, and it's a fake reality. And if you don't know the rules of the game, then you never, ever, ever win. And that's why Roadkill is trampled on. Because she doesn't know the rules of the game. So she's finished. She's a complete slave. Where the Beacon and I, we know the rules of the game, and they're completely corrupt, and they're steered towards the Husk. But we know that, and we know what the rules are, and the only way you can win is by withdrawing yourself from the game. No, I don't like those rules. They're not based on reality. They're not based on anything normal. They're not based on morality. They're not based on trust, respect, empathy. They're based on your selfish needs. And everybody has to play by those rules. So, following my confrontations, nothing changes. A little blip upwards and then it goes back to normal. There's no heart to heart. The Beacon knows it's futile and the Husk can't be bothered because the Husk would just... She never, ever, ever, ever wants these conversations. She just wants silence because that's what she's used to. Nobody has ever challenged her, ever, in her adult life. She's obviously gotten away with this behaviour, so she thinks it's all right. And along comes me, 33 years after meeting her for the first time. And along comes me, now all of a sudden, no, that's not right. You're not getting away with that. You can imagine how it's just, she can't comprehend, she can't compute what's actually going on. So yeah, everything just goes back to normal. Now, things started to improve slightly after a period of sustained awkwardness, and we just can't be bothered with it. It saps your energy and you can't do anything right. And quite frankly, we're not responsible for you. Your husband's gone, who you didn't love anyway, and we'll soon come to that. Your husband's gone, who you didn't love anyway. Couldn't even say his name, raise a glass, and now you're lonely and bitter because that's your destiny. That is your destiny. That's the world you're creating. So there was a sustained period of just emptiness, just completely always felt deflated. But we're just trying to get on with our lives. And then all of a sudden there was... she started to get involved in some of the community groups. And this is what she should have done in the first place. If she had a life, if she actually took responsibility for her own life and her own interests, hobbies, whatever, she'd get attention from those things and those groups and those social circles. But no, she wants attention from her daughters who are just trying to live their own life. So this is what she should have done in the first place, but she didn't because she's lazy. She wants everything handed to her. So something happened, and I think it was because obviously word travels around a small village quick. And I think it was because word got round that she was recently widowed. And obviously that attracts, a bit of sympathy from these other social groups, like the Women's Institute and walking groups and sewing groups or whatever, because there'll be some women who are in obviously similar situations or who have gone through the same situation. It's pretty obvious really that would happen. And so she got involved in the community, and as soon as she got involved in the community, her mood improved. I mean, obviously this isn't rocket science, but why can you not just take responsibility for your own mood? You're not happy. Do something about it. But no, she couldn't. And she never did. Like I say, this landed on her lap, like everything does. So, for the next few months, things were actually better because her mood was improved. She was obviously feeding off the attention elsewhere, and therefore give the beacon a break. And when her mood lifts, everybody's mood lifts. That's the impact she has. That's the control she has. A complete sociopath. Alright. So, next few months were quite positive. And I suppose we put, thinking back, the beacon and I thought we had weathered this storm and that we were through it. And when we looked back at this storm, we tried to reason it, if that's the right phrase. What was it? And, you know, we could only come up with, at the time, you know, the grief. But I didn't really believe there was any grief there to be had because of her behaviour towards stepdad. And again, this will become very, very, very clear soon. So, when the beacon and I were putting it down to grief, I just felt like I was lying to myself just to make something fit, but it was a stretch. In fact, it wasn't even a stretch, it was just, you know, completely the wrong size altogether. So, because I couldn't work out, again, I think I've said this, I couldn't work out what phase of grief is be a complete bitch to your daughter when she's done everything possible to help you. And also worth noting that she's had no thanks for any of the support she gave her during that difficult time. No thanks whatsoever. But again, that'll soon become really, really clear as well, that she never gets any thanks. Because you don't thank somebody, you don't give thanks to somebody for whom you're not grateful. You don't thank somebody when it's their duty. When you're a sociopath and somebody serves you a meal, they don't thank them. They treat them like trash because it's their duty and that's their slave. This is no different. So things did improve when she started socialising, and that lasted maybe 2 or 3 months. And then something happened which was probably going to change the course or the path forever